Good day, everyone. This is Teacher Tess, and welcome to Enhanced English Experience. This channel is made for learners and adults who want to enhance their English knowledge and skills. So please like, comment, subscribe, and also hit the notification button. Our video lesson for today is based on the most essential learning competency in grade 7 English for quarter 2, week 6. And the most essential learning competency is use analogy to describe or make a point. The objectives of this lesson are: define what an analogy is, differentiate analogy from figures of speech such as simile and metaphor, and use analogy to describe a point. To introduce this lesson, let us first answer the given questions. What can you say about a tree? Can you give words to describe this tree? Maybe you will say trees are big, sturdy, resilient, leafy, and useful. And you are correct. Now, can you associate a tree to life? Like humans, they grow from being a seedling to a full-grown tree. When describing something, we often resort to making comparisons to establish a clearer idea of what we are trying to describe or explain. There are many types of comparisons in the English language, including the use of figures of speech like simile and metaphor. This lesson focuses on the use of other rhetorical devices like analogy in comparing things in order to describe or make a point. Let us first differentiate simile, metaphor, and analogy through this preliminary activity. Please read, examine, and classify each sentence below as to simile, metaphor, or analogy. Number 1. He is as thin as a stick. Number 2. Life is like a bag of candies. You never know what you're going to get. Number 3. Life is a wonderful journey. Number 4. This problem is a death sentence. And number 5. Teaching students requires the same passion you would give to plants in a garden. Nurture them, care for them, let them experience both light and dark. Soon, they will grow and bloom like you expect them to be. Now, let us check if you got the correct answers. Number 1. He is as thin as a stick is a simile. Next, number 2. Life is like a bag of candies. You never know what you're going to get is an analogy. Number 3. Life is a wonderful journey is metaphor. Number 4. This problem is a death sentence is metaphor also. Number 5. Teaching students requires the same passion you would give to plants in a garden. Nurture them, care for them, let them experience both light and dark. Soon they will grow and bloom like you expect them to be. And it is analogy. Great! You have gotten all the correct answers. Now that you already have ideas about the differences among simile, metaphor, and analogy, let us test your prior knowledge about the meaning of analogy through this another activity. Identify which of the statements below are true about analogy. Write go if the statement is correct and no if it says otherwise. Are you ready? Let us begin. Number 1. Analogy can show comparisons between unrelated things. Number 2. Analogy is just another term for simile. Number 3. Analogy can be used to explain a point. Number 4. Some analogies compare relationships. And number 5. Analogy can be used to describe unfamiliar concepts. Now let us check your answers. Number 1. Analogy can show comparisons between unrelated things. The answer is go. How about number 2? Analogy is just another term for simile. And it is no. How about number 3? Analogy can be used to explain a point. The answer is go. Number 4. Some analogies compare relationships. And it is go. And number 5. Analogy can be used to describe unfamiliar concepts. And it's also go. Congratulations! You have answered all the 5 items correctly. Now that you have successfully completed the given preliminary activities, let us talk about analogy. Comparing objects like pen and pencil or ideas like happiness and sadness is a common practice, especially when writing. While there are many types of comparisons that one can make through useful figures of speech like simile and metaphor, there are also literary techniques or devices that can show and provide a more detailed comparison of things and ideas. One example of these techniques is the use of analogy. What is an analogy? An analogy is a literary technique that involves comparison of how two things are alike, but with the ultimate goal of making a point about this comparison. Analogy, although often quite similar or related with simile and metaphor, is not a figure of speech. It is a rhetorical device used to make rational arguments and support ideas by showing connections and comparisons between unlike things. The main function of analogy is not just to show, but also to explain and justify. Meanwhile, figures of speech like metaphor or simile only aim to show comparison without providing clear descriptions or explanations. As such, analogy is more complex in nature than figures of speech. Take a look at how simile, metaphor, and analogy differ from each other through these examples. Life is like a tree. This is an example of simile. In the sentence, the words life and tree are compared, and the word like shows this comparison. Life is a tree. This is a metaphor. In this example, the words life and tree are also compared, but there's no word that shows this comparison. And analogy, life is just like a tree. It starts from a seedling that grows into a full-grown tree that has trunk and branches that make itself strong and bears wonderful fruits. In this sentence, the words life and tree are also compared, and it also used the word like to show this comparison. However, analogy provides an explanation why life is just like a tree. And this is, it starts from a seedling that grows into a full-grown tree that has trunk and branches that make itself strong and bears wonderful fruits. Generally, there are 2 types of analogies commonly employed in writing. The first is analogies that identify identical relationships, and the second is analogies that identify shared abstraction. The first type of analogy takes the form A is to B as C is to D, and is often used to directly illustrate similar relationships between 2 pairs of words, often for the purpose of logical argument. The second type of analogy compares 2 things or concepts that are technically unrelated in order to establish a connection between a characteristic that they share. This type is common and useful in writing because it can make abstract ideas and concepts more concrete. Take a look at the given examples. English is to language as mathematics is to arithmetic. This is an example of analogy that identify identical relationships. This example shows the connection between English and language and mathematics and arithmetic. English is basically a subject that focuses on language, while mathematics deals primarily with arithmetic or numbers. Another example, what soldiers do for the country, white blood cells do inside the body. This is an analogy that shows shared abstraction. In this example, the abstract concept of how white blood cells function in the body is made clear by explaining that they protect everything inside, like how soldiers perform their sworn duty to protect their country. In writing, analogies play the function of making abstract concepts more concrete, adding depth and feeling to an image, and describing and making a point to establish an argument. Here are other examples of analogies that describe or make a point. Anna Was mistreated by her stepmother. She is indeed a Cinderella. In this example, Anna was compared to the fairy tale character Cinderella by explaining that she was mistreated by her stepmother. Second, life is like chocolates, especially when you are with loved ones. In the sentence, life is compared to chocolates, which means life is sweet, especially when we are with our loved ones. The third is, my parents are the only treasures that I have. I will take care and keep them forever. In this example, the word parents is compared to treasures, which means that the parents are very important. So, the speaker said that he will take care and keep them forever. Now that we are done discussing about analogy, its meaning, examples, and types, here is an exercise for you. Write analogies to compare the given unrelated objects by stating their connections or similarities. The given terms are temper and volcano, man and grass. Number 3, cotton and clouds. 4, life and will. And last, president and captain of a ship. Your time starts now. Are you finished accomplishing the previous activity? If yes, very good. Now here is another activity for you. Write a short essay about any of the topics listed below. Make sure to use analogies in describing or establishing your points. The topics are the coronavirus pandemic in the eyes of a teenager. Second, being kind towards others in times of great need. And keeping the faith in the midst of problems. I hope you can accomplish this activity. To sum up the lesson, here are incomplete statements that you have to complete. You are going to choose your answers from the given choices. Shared abstraction, abstract, concrete, figure of speech, similarities, shared, simile, analogies, rhetorical device, identical relationships, and unrelated. The incomplete statements are number 1 and 2. Analogy is different from simile and metaphor because it is a blank rather than a blank. Numbers 3 to 4. Generally, analogies are clustered into 2 types. These are analogies that identify blank and analogies that identify blank. Numbers 5 to 6. In writing, analogy can make an blank concept more blank by providing a more detailed description or explanation. 7 to 8. Blank work by describing or explaining one thing by examining its blank with another thing. And numbers 9 to 10. Analogy as a literary technique compares two blank objects in terms of their blank qualities. Let us see if you have completed the statements correctly. Numbers 1 and 2. Analogy is different from simile and metaphor because it is a rhetorical device rather than a figure of speech. 3 to 4. Generally, analogies are clustered into 2 types. These are analogies that identify identical relationships and analogies that identify shared abstraction. Numbers 5 and 6. In writing, analogy can make an abstract concept more concrete by providing a more detailed description or explanation. Numbers 7 to 8. Analogies work by describing or explaining one thing by examining its similarities with another thing. Number verse 9 to 10, analogy as a literary technique compares two unrelated objects in terms of their shared qualities. This ends our lesson on using analogy to describe or make a point. Hope you learned something and hope that you enjoyed this video lesson. Again, this is Teacher Tess saying thank you for watching and have a great day.